Good morning and welcome to this session about renewable energy. Is it hope, hype, or maybe a healthy business? This morning we had the official kickoff of this business day, Spain, Portugal. And right now we're in the session about renewable energy. So we had an economic outlook. This morning we had some do's and don'ts, and we'll hear much more about those possibilities for the energy theme as well during this hour. We have also the important things to keep in mind, like the changed legislations and the foreign investments or maybe internal investments that are currently going on and giving a boost to the renewable energy sector. And this session will focus on the rising demand of renewable energy and all the possibilities that come with it for the Dutch entrepreneurs and maybe in cooperation with Spain and Portugal, of course, as well. So we're going to do that with a few guest speakers. For Spain, we have an energy panel with Bas Dekker, CEO and co-founder of Soto Solar in Madrid. Good morning. And Wouter Draaier, founder and CEO of Solarmente. And Cristina Rivero, Director of Industry, Energy and Climate at the CEOE. But we'll tell you all about what's that in a few minutes. And for Portugal, in the second half of this session, we'll talk to Alberto Leal, Director of Renewable Energy, Deepwater Moorings and Renewables at Langhorst Offshore, quite the title, and Susana Serodio, Head of the Technical Department at Apron. So a perfect lineup and important guests with lots of expertise. So I can imagine that you have quite some questions for them. So make sure you use the chat to address those questions. They will submit it to the studio. We have some moderators answering them for you as well backstage. So make sure to take full advantage of that. And because we want to get to know each other in a digital form, we have some poll voting questions for you as well. So I would like to bring up the first poll voting question, and that is, in which subsector are you active within renewable energies? And you can click as we speak. You can choose between solar, wind, hydric, biomass, hydrogen, and other. So make sure that you click those questions, and then we can see that coming in here into the studio. And we have a second question as well, but I can imagine that goes a bit too quickly for you. So maybe you need to tune in, warm up a bit more before we hand in that second question. But the second question is, in the next 2 years, what sort of actions do you intend to take towards these markets? So we're curious what you're going to do, what opportunities are you going to take, maybe join some business days like this one, but you can choose between attend a fair, market research, find a partner, reach direct customers, establish a local presence, none of the above, still don't know, or none. So make sure you choose one of these answers. And if you want to add something, you can use the chat for that. And that way we can talk about that as well. I'm just going to take a look what's coming in. As I can see on the first poll voting question, lots of people said reach direct customers. Oh, no, subsectors first, and to look others, 50%. So make sure that you address which sectors are you in, so we can talk about that during this session as well. But I would like to invite our first 3 guests to the digital table. So Bas Dekker, Wouter Draaier, and Cristina Rivero. Thank you so much for being here today. Hopefully you can hear me. I can see you guys smile. Cannot hear you yet, but I can imagine that some nodding will do for this moment. So I would like to do short introductions of all of you. Bas, maybe we can start with you. Could you tell us a bit more about what Soto Solar does?
Yeah, thank you very much. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you, yes.
Excellent. Good morning, everyone. Yes, I'm the CEO and co-founder of Soto Solar. We have a development and investment business in Spain that focuses on large-scale plants. Large-scale in Spain is up to 1,000 megawatts, but also autoconsumo for large industrial companies and large consumers in the B2B segment. This is akin to behind-the-meter type business that we know in the Netherlands. We've been going for about 3 years now in Spain, and I moved last year to Madrid, leading a team and building a company from the ground.
Okay, thank you so much. And Wouter, maybe you could introduce some of our audience as well to your company.
Sure, I can. Bas Dekker, first of all, welcome to Spain. My name is Wouter. Thanks for having me here today. I am indeed the founder of Solarmente. We started with Solarmente just a little over 1.5 years ago. What we do is we simplify residential solar for households right now in Spain. So what we do is we do only residential solar installation. We connect local installers with house owners that want to go solar. We take away all the doubts and we make it very easy for people to go solar. In short, we basically sell savings to house owners here in Spain. We were with only 6 people last year, and we just finished an investment round enabled us to get 9 other people on the team, making us 15 as we speak right now. For now, we only do Spain, but on the agenda is also reaching out to Portugal, friends in Italy in the following 16 months from now on.
Thank you so much. I can imagine that people want to hear all about these business developments. But first, I would like to introduce Cristina Rivero, Director of Industry, Energy and Climate at the CEOE, and that is the Spanish Confederation of Business Organizations, right?
Right. Good morning to everyone, and thank you for the invitation. It's true, the COE is the represent the interests of the Spanish businesses. We are the confederation of in companies and industries in Spain, and I am in charge of industry, energy, climate, and environment.
So we are in the middle of a green transition. Spain is strongly focused on that as well. 39% of the European Recovery Fund will be dedicated to sustainability. So, Cristina, representing the Spanish businesses, how do you look at these developments? What does it mean?
Yes, well, you are right. I think that we are living in Spain, and I would say also in Europe, fascinating and challenging times in terms of energy. We have the Green Deal at the heart of our policy, and it's also been key for the recovery. As Spanish businesses, I can assure you there are great expectations regarding the digital and ecological transformation. We have now a climate and energy transition law recently approved that sets the framework, finally, after 10 years of trying to put it in place. And the expectations are also maximized by the opportunity that comes from the Next Generation EU funds that, in the case of Spain, amount to 150,000 million euros. We are one of the key beneficiaries of the EU recovery funds, and we are doing our best to try to seize that opportunity and make possible a full recovery and a green transformation of our economy. We have the energy transition in Spain at the forefront of our energy and climate policies. We have a climate neutrality objective for 2050. That means 100% renewable energy in the electricity mix, and that means a huge transformation of our energy system. When all of our plans and strategies will be implemented, that means that we will have a completely different energy sector than what we are having now. Fossil fuels will no longer dominate the energy mix, and we will have end user sectors highly electrified. So this huge transformation presents challenges and huge new opportunities that we are very, very excited about.
Sounds good. And with this this planning on spending those funding, but even before, Bas, I would like to get to you. You started your business in 2018, just as you said, 3-4 years ago. Maybe you could introduce us why your choice was Spain. What were the developments since then, and how did you get started?
Yes, thank you. The reason why we wanted to come to Spain, I mean, we have a business in the Benelux as well. Clearly, solar is an important theme throughout Europe. A business that we started 10, 12 years ago, so we're intimately familiar with the technology and the benefits of it. The issue, obviously, in the Netherlands is lack of irradiation. And it's therefore a subsidized market. The other restriction in the Netherlands is, of course, space. It's a very small country with a very large agricultural sector, so there's not a lot of space for large-scale solar. So we have a very successful rooftop solar business in the Netherlands, but we found Spain within Europe the most attractive market to also start developing large scale. And at the end of the day, energy, electricity is a commodity. And if you want to make a big impact, you need to make electricity, green electricity, as cheap as possible to really be a competitor for gray electricity. And for us, together with the business conditions in Spain, which we think are very favorable, that was behind our decision to start up Soto Solar here.
Yes, and the reason for you to move to Spain, maybe importance of a local network?
Well, I mean, the decision, we started the business end of 2018. And the first, say, year and a half, I spent basically sort of, building a company by dragging a suitcase around Europe, which from a CO2 emissions perspective is not a great strategy. But we also found that at the end of the day, if you start a new business from scratch, the business element is always around people. You have to meet people, you have to build a network. And I think everywhere in the world, I've worked across Asia and South America and in Europe as well. It's no different in Spain. In fact, it may be even more important in a country like Spain that you develop, business relationship with, which at the end of the day is also a personal relationship. So for me, despite the restrictions of COVID, and I must say, looking back over the last 10 months, I think if we see the restrictions in Amsterdam, it was exactly the right time to move, although a year ago it felt like a difficult decision to make. It's a difference between day and night. The feeling I'm getting for the opportunity here, the partners we're meeting, building a team, also getting access to the best talent. You have to be here, so that's definitely highly recommendable if you're serious about investing and developing business in Spain.
Yes, thank you so much. Walter, we have a question for you as well, of course, because your company grew exponentially even during COVID to 15 employees. So maybe you could share with our Dutch entrepreneurs some of your key success factors. What is it that made you grow so much in the past year?
I think that I can take over from the word Bart was talking about. I think trust is super important. And I think the thing that lacks in the market right now is trust. I think the market right now is quite opaque. People don't really know what they're buying. They think about solar energy. What is solar energy about? Are they making holes in my roof to mount the solar panels? So there's a lot of questions. And what I learned from doing business in Holland is that you need to generate trust. Trust is what people buy. It's exactly what Bart was selling. You buy from a person. And how do we do that? Is basically talk with over 1,000 people that were interested in solar and ask to them, what are the main struggles? And based on all those thousands of struggles and thoughts and doubts that we're having, we build a business model. So first we're an installation company. We changed the whole business model into a commercializer. So we only use existing teams to work with our solar maintenance standards to make sure the quality standards are reached that we want to reach. Once that was established, we could market ourselves as a very trustworthy partner for solar, and that started taking off. We've been in the news quite some times over the last 4 months, and I see when they start rolling, the success is there. Right now we're scaling exponentially. We're actually expanding the team as we speak today. Down the line, I think trust and listening to your customers was our main key success factor.
So where do you see your company in 3 to 5 years from now?
So the opportunity in Spain right now is the opportunity I would like to focus on. So for the first 16 to 18 months, it will be here in Spain. Although I do think I'm of the opinion that this model is easy to implement in other countries. Right now we are a Delaware C Corp as well, so we're expanding to US in a couple of years. The model, I think, will be implemented in France, in Portugal, and in Italy within 18 months of speaking right now. I think it's easy to implement by just changing the language and putting the seat in another country.
A nice that point of view. Christina, when we take an overall look at Spain, to what extent do you expect Spain to be self-sufficient in energy and green technology? Because Spain is still depending a lot on the oil and gas for import as well.
Sorry.
Yes.
You are right. We are, from an energy security perspective, we are highly dependent. 73% is our dependency on foreign sources for our energy. But these sources for oil and gas are very well diversified, and we have a robust emergency response framework in place that minimizes the risks. What is true is that our new climate and energy policies have the clear objective of an increased electrification. Our 2050 long-term strategy aims at 50% of electrification of our economy, and that will for sure reduce our import dependency. Our government expectations are that through efficiency measures and a reduction of oil consumption, and this 73% will fall to 61% in 2030, and that will mean also significant savings on fossil fuel imports. And we are also increasing our interconnections with neighboring countries, with France and Portugal, with new capacity being built.
So in which sectors do you expect the most business opportunities?
Well, concerning business opportunities, the main areas that were defined in Spain's recovery and resilience plan for the energy transition are energy efficiency, sustainable mobility, renewable energies, electricity infrastructure, storage and flexibility, and green hydrogen. We have to take the advantage in this opportunity to accelerate the actions that we have already outlined in our national energy and climate plan. And this positions clearly solar and wind in the first top, because the target in our plan is to achieve 74% of renewable energy in the electricity system. And this means adding 29,000 megawatts of solar PV and 20,000 megawatts of wind for 2030. So there's a clear opportunity for wind and for solar, but also introducing that high intermittent generation in the system has a lot of opportunities for other technologies like flexibility in the system and energy system integration. And also, we have done a lot in integrating renewables in the electricity sector and decarbonizing, but it is true that other sectors like transport, industry, and buildings, for example, still have a lot of work to do to decarbonize, and that may present also huge opportunities.
So the business of solar projects is going to be booming. It has been booming so far. So, Bas, how do you see the potential for future growth?
I think every day doing business here in Spain feels like we're riding a very big wave. I think over the last 20-25 years, a lot of progress has been made in terms of sort of general acceptance and urgency around the topic. But perhaps also due to the 2008 crisis, things have slowed down initially. And I think in recent years, and I think the trigger point in Spain has very much been the 2017 auctions. That coupled with the ambitions of the Spanish government, as well as the Green Deal in Brussels, really feels to me like there's a massive opportunity for growth, not just in solar, but as Christina says, also in related sectors. As a case in point, we're working together with a lot of Spanish partners, but there's also a number of our Dutch and German partners, which we have been working with for 10, 12 years, all looking to set up here. And so there's a lot of ancillary sectors around solar and wind that are beneficiaries of the same growth. And I think ultimately it's not just about electrification and the use of cleaner electricity, It is energy efficiency. It is data analytics. And for us, the combination of PV and green hydrogen, certainly for large-scale projects, will help a lot. Also, not just making electricity greener, but also bringing, the gas, making gas greener as well. All of those, some of those technologies are yet to be proven, and the business case still to be validated. But if that goes as rapidly as wind and solar have gone over the last 10, 15 years, I think we're going to be talking about a very different landscape within the next decade.
Yeah, so Bas, you see mostly large-scale opportunities as well. But Wouter, you deliver solar systems directly to the customer. So despite the abundant amount of sun in Spain, there's still not that many privately owned rooftop solar panels. Why is that?
I think, well, the 2 points there. There are privately owned rooftops, as in single-family households, and building blocks. Mm-hmm. So we have more or less 18.5 million households in Spain. 25 of that is privately owned, one family in the house, and 75% of that is people living in building blocks. For those 4.5 million households, I think I have a very good solution directly and good opportunity. Then the rest of the 75% is living in building blocks. What was the case till last year is that 100% of the people living in these building blocks had to agree with installing solar panels on the roof of a building block.
100%.
Spain is a bit different than exactly. That was last year was the case. So then if you had 18 neighbors and one person did not want to have solar panels on the roof, that was the bottleneck. Because the rooftops are a shared community, is not owned by one person. So everybody has to agree with what's happening on that roof. Then recent changes in law were beneficial for that. So that means that nowadays in certain regions, only 50% of the people that live in a certain building block have to agree with it. If 50% or more people do agree, we are able to install solar panels on that roof. And we have already finished installations on building blocks with 18 people, in this case, all of them agreeing to do residential solar installations. So we see step-by-step improvements in law that promotes to also install not only on privately owned households, but also on building blocks. And that is the biggest opportunity for the coming years for us in this case.
So one of the hurdles to take was laws, and in this case it was changed. But Christina, what are other current challenges that starting entrepreneurs might face when doing business in Spain?
We have, as you can imagine, several challenges, both for the regulator and for the entrepreneurs. Some of them have been already said. I would highlight we have a real challenge in an effective coordination between our central government and the regions that would smoothly, that would benefit a lot the entrepreneurs. The regulation, it was said before, we have changed to the model, the regulatory model for the remuneration framework, and we still have to fine-tune that auction model, and we have to streamline the permitting process. And there's been also a growing problem of acceptance with the biodiversity impact of such a huge quantity of plants that we have to deal also with that. And also modernizing and investing in our network, I think it's a challenge.
Okay, so Bas, maybe getting back to other opportunities as well. How do you see the development of green hydrogen production in Spain?
I think I was in a conversation yesterday in Barcelona, where I'm spending the week for business, and around the table it was agreed that in terms of green hydro, Spain has the opportunity to sort of become the Middle East of Europe. I think the conditions here in terms of irradiation, in terms of space, in terms of network infrastructure, there is no shortage of opportunity for Spain to become a leader or the leader in the production of cheap green hydrogen.
Okay, sounds like an interesting insight that we could do a separate webinar about, but unfortunately we do not have the time for that today. I wish I had. So Wouter, I would like to get to you and maybe have some finishing advice, because you're a young entrepreneur, successful business, providing technical solutions for the environmental challenges. So what would your advice be for the Dutch entrepreneur?
Well, I learned it the hard way. So I did business in Holland, and doing business in Holland is more efficient and reduced time. As Bart told before, you need to generate trust, and you really need to talk with people. You need to go to the people, to the person themselves, and ask their struggles, their needs, their wants, and based on that, test if your business model is actually valid. If people are actually interested in doing business or want to buy your product or your savings. What we didn't do in the beginning was talking with customers. So in the beginning, I had a very clear idea of how to do business myself. I formed a team. We failed big time because we thought only the thing that was in our mind was the right for the persons. After doing significant reading during the lockdown, which was quite severe here, I found out that what's in my mind is not always the right thing to do. We talked a lot. Actually, we only talked all day from Monday to Friday with clients. And we found out that people were not looking for the business model we were building. I learned that your client is not in your office, but is outside. Visit your clients, talk with them, be here, be present, ask all the questions you want to ask, and generate trust on the spot. And I think that's the most important thing I can tell you.
Thank you so much for that advice. Bas, maybe any business-to-business advice you want to give?
Yeah, well, I think the theme is very similar, but anybody in business understands that it's about people. So for me, businesses, if you talk about residential owners or you talk about business owners or managers, I think that the advice is the same. You really need to be here. If you're serious about building the business, don't come over here and tell people how it's done. Talk to them and figure out together how to create the win-win. And I must add as well, as somebody who hasn't holidayed a lot in Spain, but obviously had visited Barcelona a number of times on business trips, I can highly recommend Madrid as a place to live. It's for both personal reasons, but also business. It's very well connected. The train system here in Spain is very efficient. You can reach anywhere in 2.5 hours, all major cities. And I think from our perspective, there's obviously 4 or 5 major industrial hubs, but companies do tend to, the SME segment here is extremely large. So business is everywhere. And it's important to be able to reach people for that same reason, be able to connect and not sort of, Zoom is a great way to keep talking, as we found out in the last 12 months. But being able to travel and visit people is extremely important.
Yes, thank you so much. And some last words of advice from you, Christina, maybe from the Spanish Confederation of Business Organizations?
Yes, well, yes, I'm very glad to hear the recommendations of Spain and living in Madrid and doing businesses here. I would also like to say that in COE, we are highly committed with maximization of the utilization of the recovery funds. We have created a special office to help companies to have all the information to be able to access to those funds for projects in Spain. We have a digital platform, and I encourage you also to contact the platform, and we are here to help you also.
Yes, thank you so much. We will send the important links via the chat towards the people watching, so you can all make sure to stay in touch. And you also have the possibility to connect via the B2Match link and app, of course. So that will be good to keep in mind. So thank you so much, Bas, Wouter and Christina, for joining us here in the first half of this energy theme. Thank you for your time. And now we'll switch to our next guest. But first, I would like to have our second or our third, actually, poll voting question up, because we're heading to Portugal. But where is Portugal heading to? And is there maybe some room for international cooperation? So this is actually a statistic that we're asking you about. So in 2019, how much did renewable energies weighted in Portugal's total energy production? So you can take an estimated guess, or maybe you already know, but you can choose between 39, 54, 62, and 79%. And in the meantime, I can see the guests are joining us. Susana Sarodio, Head of Technical Department at Apron, and Alberto Lau, Deepwater Mooring and Renewable Energy Director at Langhorst Offshore. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hello, everyone.
So I can hear you. That's great. So maybe do some short introductions. Susana, starting with you, could you maybe introduce us a bit?
So I'm Susana. I'm from the technical department of the Portuguese Renewable Association. I've been in Apron for 5 years now. It's been a big challenge, mainly in the last few years with all the changes, also with the European objectives that of course have an impact of policy and regulation in Portugal. So.
And what is the mission of Apron?
So our mission is to promote renewable electricity with the aim to reach decarbonization in line with the European and the Portuguese targets to reach neutrality in 2025. For this, we support and coordinate the view of our members regarding policy and regulation in order to remove barriers to deploy renewable. Our members are mainly companies related with renewable energy production. Okay, we represent more than 90% of the renewable installed capacity in Portugal. And with this view and mission, we work very closely together with official entities and other similar entities, either national and European, as an important key player to deploy the energy policies in Portugal, with a permanent contact and dialogue with the Portuguese government and the official bodies, and of course other stakeholders that work in the field. So,
thank you so much. I hope hopefully people at home could follow that as well. I don't see any remarks on the chat. May I ask the technical department to maybe put your voice a bit up in the studio so I could hear it a bit better? Thank you so much. And Alberto, getting to you, could you maybe briefly describe the profile of your company and the position in Portuguese market? Because I understand you're actually a merger between a Dutch and Portuguese company as well.
Correct. Correct. I hope you are listening well. I am completely out of office. I'm traveling, so the sound is okay. Just to have the feedback from you all. Yeah, I'm Alberto Leão. I work in the mooring business and today is at Langhorst Offshore, which is really a merger of a Dutch company, a private family-owned company since the 1800s, with a Portuguese family, which was the Gramacho family. And the business went all working all together for several years. And back at the end of the last century, so around 98, there was a suggestion of a merger. So there were companies of equal size, and they merged and create Langhorst Euronet Portugal. Eventually, in 2012, a private equity group called Wireco, so it's an equity between a Canadian and American capital, pick us up and we merge all the business related with fiber under the brand of Langhorst Offshore. So that's where we are. So in relation to this market in renewables, we are just transferring our experience and innovation and R&D from our products that we are leader in maritime and especially in oil and gas moorings. And basically what is the driver is to set up from mooring, wave devices, solar panels that are on on a lake or on a river, or the windmills that are offshore. So you are mooring them up to the soil or the seabed at this circumstance. And so that's our skills. But that's a long tradition from the Dutch and the Portuguese to stay on this whole business, and we are still going on.
So some intertwining of knowledge going on over there.
Correct.
So, Susanna, you spoke about overcoming those barriers, but could you maybe give some examples of what those barriers could be?
So, in the electricity renewable sector, there are two main barriers in Portugal right now that we need urgently to find solutions. First of all is the permitting process in Portugal. Nowadays is to get the final production license will take around 3 to 5 years depending on the technology and if the project is subject or not to the environmental impact assessment. The overall process is very bureaucratic depending on the evaluation and pronouncement of many very different entities. Such as, of course, the energy official entity, the environmental entity, but also the regional development commissions, the municipalities, and so on. So it's time-consuming, requiring direct contact with these several entities, and we don't have a one-stop shop. So you really need to go to each one of these entities and contact directly with them. Also, some of these entities have lack of staff right now and have not yet a digital platform where you can submit the project. It's only very based one-on-one and emails. And the second barrier, I have to say, is the grid availability. There is not capacity available for new projects, many large renewable projects, of course. So the only way to develop new projects is through capacity tenders or via an agreement with the grid operator that the promoter has to pay for the grid reinforcement. Of course, this creates pressure not only in the grid operator because they are receiving a lot of requests to evaluate projects, but also increased costs to the projects because this project will be in the electricity market and of course are subject to more risks. Okay.
So Alberto, I can see you agreeing with some of that. Anything you would like to add?
Yes, I think that first of all, we have to focus on two things. First is the Spanish and the Portuguese market of energy is the same. It's shared with one. Portugal has a slight advantage at this moment on the renewable energy because it's a smaller country. I believe that we are also on the solar, we are, well, in percentage, we are a little bit ahead, but the situation is changed and it will be progressively as one, like you call it Iberia. We found, because we participate in several projects now on the coast for not only, for the wave so any device to produce electricity, and wouldn't like to focus just on offshore renewable wind because that is massive, but there are a lot of other smaller devices that also produce electricity, and they're testing a lot in Portugal and Spain. And so I see a lot of opportunities. The testing or the trial of those concepts, it's a very large and wide scope of opportunities, especially for Portugal and Spain, because we are surrounded by sea, and also we have a lot of sun exposure compared with our neighbors in Europe. So those two concepts, they have a few barriers, like we have just described by Susanna. I think in Spain there are also some events similar, but I see basically plenty of opportunities for new developers, people with with ideas to make a floating wind farm or device at the beginning, or something to adapt to the wave energy or the tidal energy, or reflect on a very large lake, just to try to orientate the solar panels to have the biggest exposure. You know, all of these are smaller devices that will break in the opportunity for smaller companies, new developers to come along. Of course, the barriers will be licensing and permitting, but I think it's something that is going more or less in the same page all over Europe.
Yes, so some smaller initiatives maybe complementing the larger scale companies. There are plenty of opportunities there.
Yeah, in large scale companies, what is happening is, for instance, now I'm changing to floating wind. What happened is that Principal Power developed a kind of a concept for the floating wind, which can work on a wide range of water depths. And so it makes, well, the consortium was with the Portuguese utility and also the Spanish utility. They are also members in there. And of course, PPI will have the concept. And so it is also part of it. And what is these big consortiums? They are, first, they need to trigger and to understand what are the feasibility, not only for theoretical modelings, but how much is the energy that I'm going to produce and at what cost. That stage is over. So we already passed that from Windfall to Atlantic. And now everybody knows, or not everybody, but the entities that were inside that big project, they know what are more or less the costs. They have a barrier, so they can know exactly the concept. And for the new green hydrogen business that is being prepared between also Portugal and Netherlands, it's also getting grids and starting with those base points. So it's not on the ground zero anymore, but it's a little bit ahead, which is quite great and gives a lot of opportunities for new incomers in these areas.
Yes, because as I understand, Portugal is the same as the Netherlands, a bit of a front runner in the energy transition. So renewables are becoming more and more important in the national energy consumption as well. Susanna, could you maybe give us an overview, some facts and figures of what you believe are the most important facts there?
Sure. So renewable electricity already has a share of 60% in the electricity mix. So it's already a big expression, and this renewable energy comes mostly for wind, onshore wind, and hydropower. But the fact is that the ambition for 2030 is even more ambitious, and you want to get to 80% of renewable electricity in the mix. So this will come mostly from solar and for repowering the wind farms that we already have, and that most of them will come to the end of life in this decade. But also we need to look at with the new ambition of Europe with the climate law and now the Green Deal. We need to look at our national energy and climate plan, and also the needs for the national hydrogen plan. And probably we will need more capacity that is actually in the energy plan. So probably we'll need to look at other technologies to complement this and to have a contribution for the new ambition. Okay.
So I'm going to have the poll voting, the third question pulled up, because we asked our audience in 2019, how much did renewable energies weighted in Portugal's total energy production? And we had 39%, am I saying that correctly? No, 37% voting for 39%. Oh, this is going great. But I will just say that most of the people at home voted for 54%. So the renewable energies in 2019. So would you say that's correct?
In the renewable sector, last year it was around 58%. Also, we can say I round it to 60%. But if you look at the overall energy system, yeah, we have around 30%. Okay, it's different if you look only to electricity, or if you look to the whole energy system. Okay.
So, Susanna, you just spoke about the biggest challenges also with offshore wind. But Alberto, you've been involved in main wind offshore, in the main wind offshore project, I should say, in Portugal. So how is this realized and why was it set up?
Well, basically, what we are seeing, the difference is equal every part of the world at this stage, because as our previous panel exposed, this is new for these new technologies for all the renewable energy. If you look at the efficiency of solar panels 10 years ago and now, you are completely surprised. So basically, when you pick up the wind, so onshore wind, you see until it started, you see a lot of towers and turbines inland. But the driver, not only the visual impact, is that you have more consistent wind in the offshore. And of course, you are not there. If you place it 20 miles away from shore, you do not see them, so you don't have the big impact. So all the utilities and also the private equity firms and groups that are orientated for this type of business, they all understood that it will be a shift after you reach a certain level on onshore. The only way out to obtain the Green Deal goals will have to be in other direction on offshore. What it has been, we have been leading also on this area, working with consortiums in Holland or Netherlands, in Spain, not yet. It will start this year. Portugal was one because of being a small country with a lot of coast, so they did it in that way. And but basically the consortium is formed by a global setup of companies that could be from every part of the world. And the idea is to demonstrate that not only theoretically you can have more wind, but it's really, because it's a little bit more expensive to build these facilities offshore. But if you scale it up, you will have more or less the same price after this evolution, and then you will get more wind and more capacity to produce electricity, and during a larger wind time period. So what happened? Basically, based always on utilities, they found out a consortium, go to the permitting round, starting for this trial, smaller, 3 to 5 units offshore. And then, of course, the first ones are expensive, and measuring how much capacity they can produce and compare it directly with other sources. And that will be the driver. And what is happening is that it's proven to be on the right direction. And now people will start in the next 2-3 years to look at synergies and to be more efficient on the scaling up, not only just to 3 to 5 turbines, but to go on a bigger group. And we are talking about 100 megawatts, 250 megawatts. After in the Netherlands, you have last year you have completed the fixed bottom around 1 gigawatt just in the Netherlands. So you can see that this will be scaling up, and after the fixed offshore, you will go to the offshore really, and that's where we are positioning, and that's where we are targeting, and we are seeing very nice perspectives in the next coming years.
I heard you mention the consortiums. So does that mean that it's done via tenders, through tenders?
Yes. All this business, it's first you have to find, well, the governments and locations have to have the idea of developing a tender to lease back or to give the rights to have this concession. And then, as Susanna mentioned before, you have also to assure that you have a grid connection, which is also another barrier that there are not so often a lot of places, even if some location would like to have this permitting, you have a large investment to make it be impossible to get into the grid. So this is another barrier that is trying to be sorted out by the governments of Portugal and Spain and
so is it
everywhere in Europe as well.
Is it for proven ideas or is it for trials?
It's for proven ideas because you are talking about a level of investment that it's not to play with. We are talking about projects of in a minimum of 150 million euros, and therefore what you are targeting is really measuring, because you know that you will, with a scale up, you will reduce the cost of per unit. You are seeing the turbines generating much more, becoming bigger and bigger. So you need to balance the costs and the capex, and then you will see how much more electricity you can produce at that location compared with the onshore one. These tenders are very, very transparent. All of them are international. It's not something. The only thing that you could see, not presently, but you will see in the next 5 years, is something like a local content minimum for a project in Portugal or Spain or Netherlands or whatsoever. So at the beginning it will become this, but you are just inviting the companies that are interested to come around to those countries that are making these tenders. So it's just that. But you are seeing that all over the world, so it's no secret.
But if companies would be interested in having some more information, where would they go?
Well, they should go for Susana Association in Apron, because it's really you need to tackle. Now that is there are edits and pages to everywhere, but in order to know exactly what are the best ways for you to drive in, and you have to see what is your subsector. There are some structure from offshore renewables. You have another one from the maritime. I know more from the maritime side. So producing electricity from waves or tidal. It's a lot. You have at least 3 or 4 consortiums that are working in Portugal. One is Swedish, another one is Portuguese, the other one is Dutch. And so you see, they come along here because it's a good solution, good sea conditions, a couple of points to test. If you go to Canarias, you have there another center to make all these trials. And there are European programs inside of this Green Deal and before, FP7 Horizon 2020, that will allow you to apply to this application to get some fee, some support. And if you are in, you can use those structures, and there you measure your concept.
Yes.
After you are on that league, if you go for the next step, then it's a big consortium and so on. So that's basically it.
I can add something to this. So the government has announced this year they are speaking about 2 tenders this year, that actually one is for already hydrogen and the other is for floating solar, okay, and the reservoirs of dams. So there isn't yet a date to the tenders to come out, but it's something that they have announced. Actually, recently, this week, they published a methodological guide for hydrogen that I think that they are starting to prepare things to launch. Probably the models of the tenders will be something similar to the solar tenders that happened in the last 2 years. They are not announcing different remuneration models, so we think it will be something similar, but there are not still yet a lot of information. But if you need, of course, my help, and if you want to discuss what happened in the last tenders, I'm available, of course.
And you can also be contacted via the B2 Match platform. And we have some links for our viewers as well that will be put in the chat. So you can click on that, because I imagine it's we talked about this previously. It was a difficult name to pronounce, right? Or even to write for a Dutch person.
Yes, we have a website that have all the information of the last tenders, but the name is Leilões Renováveis, and I understand it's in Portuguese is a little bit.
Exactly. We'll write that down. So you at home have the correct link and you don't have to guess how to write that. So maybe some final advice. Alberto, where do you think that the Dutch expertise can complement on the Portuguese?
Well, to be honest with you, I think there are something that is very, very particular. You have this business that is the green hydrogen that Europe is pursuing. They want to be quickly the first and the leaders of this market all over the world, because it's a trend that it was subjective, and there is a consortium that started with an idea from a Dutch company together with a group of Portuguese companies. So basically the idea was to take up that we shut down the two coal, well, first coal, we have two energies to produce energy from coal. One is already off the grids, and they are trying to use those facilities to make their center of producing green hydrogen. So it is on the south part of the country. It's being prepared something like a lot of solar power for the long hours of the day exposure that Portugal has, and will be combined with offshore winds, and those capacities will then be shipped out through the center of Europe, through Holland. So, sorry, Netherlands now. So basically, the project is, of course, this will be a huge project, and there are also interests between German companies, Dutch companies, and Portuguese that are being merged. I think that is the biggest opportunity when you are talking about volume. Secondly, I think you will see more in Spain, but in Portugal it will not be less, the solar development. And on the third, on an equal pace, the floating wind offshore, both in Portugal and Spain. And for that, the Dutch has a lot of companies, I can mention a few just for the installing. We have Boskalis, previous to the Smith, you have a Nord, you have a lot of companies that are really looking into the maritime sector, which is something that is the combination between the Portuguese and the Dutch for this sector worldwide, that makes the unification of Lankhorst at that time. And there are a lot of skilled companies in those two countries. And I think that's the huge opportunities. All the things that are taking into the maritime, being that floating offshore wind, or wave, or tidal energy, or airborne energy in the sea. So that's basically the biggest targets that I would look from the entrepreneurs common between the Netherlands to come to Portugal and Spain.
Thank you so much. And Susanna, some advice from you?
Yeah, I would say also, of course, offshore wind. We are now starting to develop the technology in Portugal. We have a project of floating offshore wind, but of course we will need more projects, even for develop the hydrogen strategy. I think the offshore wind will be a very good complementary technology to produce green hydrogen. And of course we have more experience on this field than we have, and you can bring a lot of expertise to us. Also, of course, we are looking at what we need to do more to reach a higher ambition, even though now with the Green Deal. And there are other areas that we have to look into, like energy communities and, of course, energy efficiency. And I think we can cooperate and have a lot of things coming from you that will help us to reach the decarbonization. So.
Thank you so much. Thank you both so much for your time and joining us and sharing your expertise on these subjects. So I think our audience is very pleased with that. So for now, thank you for your time. You can be contacted via the B2Match app for the people at home watching. So make sure to stay in touch and connect to that network, because that's what we're here for. So that would be the end of this energy themed session. I would like to thank you all at home for taking the time to watch. I would like to thank our participants and speakers, Bas Dekker, Wouter Draaier, Cristina Rivero, Alberto Leal, and Susanna Serodio. Thank you so much. I was going to say in Dutch, dankjewel. Thank you so much for your time. And also, of course, we would like to thank the embassies and the NBSO for their support for this webinar. So the next session is agriculture and horticulture, and that starts at 1:30. So we have a bit of a lunch break in between. And in the meantime, you have all the possibilities to do one-on-one meetings with the network abroad, the Netherlands Enterprise Agency, and the NBSO during these breaks. And that's during all breaks until 5 o'clock this afternoon. So make sure to use that. The B2Match platform also has all the information about relevant Dutch Netherlands Enterprise Agency instruments and other relevant information from our speakers as well. So thank you so much for your time, and hopefully see you in the next session.